If you guys are like me and a lot of other guitar players, you probably learned your chord scale association backwards. What I mean by that is if you hear a song in A minor, you probably refer to that song as being in the key of A minor. That is how I learned and how countless others learned, but it is not the best way to approach it. In fact, I found it to be counterproductive to music theory as a whole. Learning from a standpoint of minor pentatonic only, I struggle with deeper topics like modes, and it only deepened my gap in musical knowledge, and it made more complex musical ideas much more difficult to learn. So in today's video, we will not only dive deep into the power of the major scale, and in doing so, you will unlock your understanding of not only chord progressions, but of their modal relationship to one another. As musicians, what we should be doing is basing everything off of the parent key, which is the major scale. Let me explain. In the diatonic scale, diatonic meaning all of the chords that are included in a specific key. From that parent key, we get 7 chords that all fit together in harmony. And these 7 chords are the foundation of all modern music. By learning the major scale, it will not only deepen your understanding of music theory, but you'll be able to learn songs by ear in much less time. Because you'll know what chords fit in that key. You'll be able to easily identify what notes make up a chord, and you'll understand how to make music that actually sounds modal. So let's dive into the major scale so you can see how powerful this scale really is. So first, let's go over the formula on how a major scale is constructed. And because the formula remains the same, you can use it to build any major scale for any key you want. You'll want to memorize this formula, but believe me, it's not that hard to remember. So I've got my iPad and we'll write this out together. So the formula to build a major scale is whole step, a half step, then a whole step, another whole step, and another whole step. And that's it. That's all you have to memorize in order to build any major scale. So let's see this formula in action and build ourselves a C major scale. Step 1 is pick a root note. In our example, we want to build a C major scale. So C is our root note. Now let's apply our formula. So we have a whole step interval. If you don't know what intervals are, I made a video on that. So I'll put that in the link in the description below. So go watch that first, learn that so you don't get lost as we continue on. Okay, so we have our root note. So now we move up according to the formula, a whole step. That takes us to our D. And then we have another whole step, which takes us to our E. Then we have a half step. So from E to F is a half step. So there's our half. And now we have a series of whole steps. So from F to G is a whole step. From G to A is another whole step. And from A to B is our other whole step. And that's it. We've now built our major scale using this formula. So this is the point where it starts to get really interesting. So our current scale is C, D, E, F, G, A, B. Remember I said the major scale will show us which notes make up our chords? Well, here's how you do it, and it's really easy. To find our notes to build a chord, we just take every other note from the major scale that we just constructed. Our first note now becomes our first chord in the key of C. So let's build it. So we have our note C. So we skip a note, gives us our note E. Then we skip another note. So every other note, we get G. So to make a C major chord, we have C, E, and G. And there you have it. We built our first chord, the note C, E, and G. And we built it by taking every other note from the major scale. So let's do that with the rest of our notes and get all of our chords in that key. Okay, so now we start on our second note, which is D. And so we're going to do that same process. We're going to skip every other note. So we have D, we skip a note, gives us F. Then we skip another note, gives us A. So this first chord here, we built a C major. This chord now is our second chord is now a D minor. So let's work on the third note, or our third chord in this key. So we have E, we skip a note, this gives us G. Skip another note, we have B. This makes our E minor chord. Let's do our fourth chord in the progression. We have F, we skip a note, gives us our A. We skip the B, gives us C, and this gives us our F major chord. Our 5 chord, so we start on G, we skip a note, gives us B. We skip the C, we have D. This gives us our G major chord. Let's do our 6th chord, starting on our A, we skip the B, we have C. We skip the D, we have E. This gives us our A minor chord. The last chord in the progression starts on B. We skip the C, so we have B, then we have D. We skip the E, gives us F. This gives us our B diminished chord. The one thing to take away from this is the pattern of major and minor chords. This pattern stays the same no matter what key you write your major scale in. The 1, 4, and 5 chords will always be major. The 2, 3, and 6 chords will always be minor, and that 7th chord will always be a diminished chord. I hope you're beginning to see how powerful all this information is, especially when it comes to learning songs by ear. If you figure out the key of that song, well, now you have a great idea of all the other chords that could possibly be in that song. Now, there are chords that will work, but are not in key, but that's a topic for another video. But for the majority of popular music, most songs are diatonically in key. Now that we understand the major scale, the chords that are found in it, and how they are numbered, let's look at another powerful application of the major scale. So going back to our major scale, we know that we get 7 chords in that key. 3 major chords, 3 minor chords, and a diminished chord. We also know that the 1, 4, and 5 chords are major, the 2, 3, and 6 chords are minor, and that 7th chord is a diminished chord. With all of this information that we now have, do you see why referencing everything from a minor scale might be problematic? In the beginning of the video, I referenced the A minor example, but now we know that there are 3 minor chords in every key. So when you use the minor scale, how do you know what key the song really is in? The song could be in the key of C, and your A minor is the 6th, or the song could be in the key of G, and your A minor is the 2 chord, or you could be in the key of F, making your A minor the 3 chord. This is why basing everything off the parent key, the major scale, is so important. So we already have a mountain of information that we have extracted from the major scale. But there's more. Modes. So let's talk about modes and their relationship with the major scale. Whether you realize it or not, anytime you play music, you are playing modally. So far, we've learned that each chord is numbered, but we can also give those chords names, which is what the modes are. So just like we numbered those 7 chords, we can also assign names to those 7 chords. So our 1 chord, C, we can rename this Ionian. Our 2 chord, we can name this Dorian. Our 3 chord, we can name this Phrygian. Our 4 chord, we can name this Lydian. Our 5 chord, we can name this Mixolydian. Our 6 chord, we can name Aeolian. And our 7th chord, we can name this Locrian. These are the names of the modes. So in any key, whichever chord we make our tonic or our home chord is technically the modal progression that we are currently playing at. One of the other things to understand is that the more chords are in your progression, the more it's going to sound like the Ionian mode or major. So if we want to make a modal chord progression sound more like its mode, then we need to use less chords and emphasize that chord that is in that mode. I will be making a video real soon on how to make your chord progressions sound more like the mode that you are targeting. But for now, we're just doing a brief overview so we can see what's happening under the hood. If you search online about modes, you're going to come across a ton of articles and a ton of videos, all trying to teach you the so-called modal scales. They'll tell you that you need to learn all 7 shapes, the Ionian shape, the Dorian shape, the Phrygian shape, and so on and so on. But look at what we learned today. Where do the modes come from? Well, they come from, that's right, the major scale. So, how many scales do you think we really need to learn? 1, the major scale. So in our key of C, if we start playing the major scale from this first note, we are playing the Ionian scale. You want to jam over a D minor or D Dorian track? Just use the parent scale, which is C major. You can either just start on the second note of the C major or just emphasize that note D. So if we start on the D with our major scale, we are playing D Dorian. If you want to play E Phrygian, well, that's in the 3rd chord in the key of C, where you would just start your scale starting on the E note, and then you are playing E Phrygian, and so on down the line. The major scale is the most important scale to learn. So let's recap what we learned today. 1, the major scale has a formula which can be used in any key. 2, using that formula gives us all the notes of the scale. 3, then using those notes, we can build all of the chords in that key. 4, we learned that every key has 3 major chords, 3 minor chords, and 1 diminished chord. 5, we learned that these chords are numbered 1 through 7. 6, we also learned that these chords can be named, which are the modes. 7, you can solo over all of the chords using just the 1 major scale shape. Just start your scale on the note that corresponds to the tonic, to your home bass. I have a great video that will help you simplify your scale practice. I'll leave that in the description of this video as well. I hope you understand the importance of the major scale, and we'll be diving into more in-depth topics in future videos. But this should get you off to a great start in deepening your understanding of music theory. So learn the formula, the names, and practice your major scale. I'll see you in the next video where we will explore these topics more in depth. Make sure to like and subscribe so you can follow us along in this journey.